and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Now, last episode, we talked a little bit about how do you say that? And actually, of course, that was the introduction where I explained that what we come up with now is best guess, sort of a modern evolution for the Egyptian language. So, now let's get into a little more nitty-gritty and how do you say certain sounds? So, the best place to start is with the hieroglyphics. And so these are my little flashcards. Let's start with this one here. This little arm sound, it's spelled A. And you'll find it in certain words like, recognize it right here, that's the name of the sun god, Ra. Now, you tend to hear it even in documentaries. The voiceover person will say Ray because they use an E. Well, this arm sound is an ah. Actually, to review, this book right here, From Pharaoh's Lips, Ancient Egyptian Language and the Arabic of Today, they talk a little bit about that, and this says that actually this is a guttural sound that's not in English, but the closest it comes to in English is an ah. Now, if you're reading an Egyptology book, boy, those people will drive you batty. Because if you look closely, you see that little apostrophe-looking sign? That means this. But they put it as an apostrophe because it's not really an A, it's some other sound. They're being academically correct, but when it comes to how do I sound this out in my head, until you've read it a few million times, you want to like claw your eyes out. So that covers Ra. The next one is also an A, but it's a different sound. And that's our little eagle friend right here. Now, if you read in books, oh, and by the way, they'll use either a 3 or a combination of the little squiggly signs to put that in Egyptology books. But they explain that sound as being a glottal stop. Now, what the heck is that? My bit of zen on it is this. If you've ever watched the Osbournes, and you hear Ozzy, who's got a Cockney accent, and he says, "Where's my bottle of something?" Sharon! That stop that you heard, well, you'll also hear it if you hear a diva say, "Oh, no, you didn't." That stop that you heard in the vowel and didn't or bottle, that sound, that's the stop. So this would be an ah sound. Put that together in the name Ma'at, and you have the Egyptian word for truth and for the goddess Ma'at. Also in the evil serpent Apophis, that's the Greek name, but the Egyptian name was A'apep. So, another sound that they'll try and compare it to like the CH in the Scottish loch or something like that. It's this little round placenta thing. And you'll see it as a CH or KH because it's also in the word Ankh. If you've ever watched on National Geographic and they have Dr. Zahi Hawass, that funny Egyptian guy with the fedora, he gets on and he talks about Tutankhamun, and it sounds like he's almost hawking a loogie. That's because that CH sound that's represented here still exists in Arabic, and there's actually an Arabic letter that corresponds to it, and it's got that kind of funky sound to it. What's interesting is that sound, when it made the transition to Coptic and to Greek, sometimes got turned into an SH, and even in other languages. If you've ever heard the name or seen the name of the deity Seth, or Set, sometimes it's also written as Sutech or Setesh. See, the thing is, the Sutech became Setesh when it was spoken by people who couldn't manage to, hawk something up as they were speaking. That's where that comes from. And, okay, another one of my pet peeves. This little sound right here. Now, the read here, problem with this is different scholars have translated it different ways. If you read anything by Budge, and we talked about him in a previous episode, he tended to render this sound as an A. But nowadays, people tend to render it as an I. Or what's really maddening, it drove me wild until I figured out why they did this. Take a look down at the bottom. Egyptologists will render it as a J. Why a J? That's because of the German influence. A lot of eminent Egyptologists are German. And if you've ever studied German, or if you've ever met somebody who's German and their name was Jan, they're spelled with a J, that's because, the J sound gets pronounced as kind of a Y in German. And so they'll spell it as an I, but when they want to try and put it in italics and approximate the Egyptian language, they'll use a J. It's crazy. But this has come to a little bit of confusion with the name of another deity who's known in Greek as Anubis. His name starts with the little I right here. So, how would you say it? Inapu? Anapu? Either one. Now, I've heard another common spelling is Yinapu. I take issue with this one for one reason. There is a Y sound, but it's with the double read. So, if they wanted it to be Yinapu, probably they would have used this instead of a single one. Hang on, I gotta put these down. So, what's interesting is in Arabic, there's actually a character that can be rendered as an A or an I depending on what follows it. So it's entirely possible that this sound here changed depending on what else came with it. And it could be that by the time the Greeks came to Egypt, they were hearing something that sounded kind of like Anapu. And it might be that hundreds of years before it was more like Inapu. Yinapu? Maybe. But given on how it's spelled, I'm doubtful myself. So, it really helps to see the language, and I just had to kind of put these flashcards together because I couldn't put the images into the video the way I wanted to. But it kind of gives you an idea of some of the challenges that you have, and incidentally, other languages that don't use a Roman script, for example, Arabic, we talked about that a lot. You ever notice that there's two different ways to spell Quran? You've got K-O-R-A-N, and you've got Q-U-R-A-N. Both say the same word, but it's because it's two different ways of rendering from a non-Roman alphabet. Japanese is the same way. So is Chinese. It's interesting, the city that we know as Beijing now used to be called Peking. So, and as a matter of fact, years ago I studied Japanese, and there's two different systems of Romanizing Japanese names. And one of them is called the Hepburn system, and there's another, I don't remember what the name of the other one was. But there's no standard system like that for ancient Egyptian names. Probably the reason why scholars haven't done it yet is because you have works being published in French, German, and English, so they've got to find something that between those three different languages they can all agree on. And also the other issue that we talked about, where in order to be perfectly honest and academically correct, they have to say, well, we don't really know. This is just an approximation. But for those of us that want to work with Egyptian deities and learn more about the language and the culture, it helps to have something as a clue to start from. So this is my 2 cents or to read symbols on the subject. Hopefully this will give you a little bit of help when it comes to reading Egyptian names. If you've got some that really are confusing, that you've got some questions about, message me. Put a comment here on YouTube, and I'll make some more flashcards and we'll figure out how to say it. So, hopefully this will help you with your Egyptian, pagan, or Kemetic practice. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you Sanoti.